The great hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with the glow of crystal lights. Hanging above the silver floor, and alien voices mixed into a low hum as delegates from hundreds of worlds gathered to begin the annual Peace Summit. And at the center of the hall stood the tall, circular table made of black stone from the moons of Virex, where the oldest members of the council sat in their flowing robes and carried the wisdom of 1,000 years and beyond. The air was calm and filled with the sound of speeches as one by one leaders spoke of trade routes and treaties and promises of peace, until without warning every screen in the great hall turned black, and the sound of sharp static filled the chamber, and the voices of the delegates fell silent, and all eyes turned toward the giant display on the far wall, which now showed an image none of them expected to ever see again. It was Earth's small blue and green world hidden in a quiet corner of space, yet the image on the screen was not peaceful, for skies above the planet were filled with strange flashes of light like storms, but too precise, too controlled, and dark shapes moved slowly through the clouds, their outlines huge and unnatural like machines, but with the shapes of living creatures, and no one could tell if they were weapons or something else entirely. Across the hall, murmurs began to rise, and some delegates leaned close to one another, speaking in sharp whispers, and fear began to spread in the air, for there were those who remembered the ancient warnings about this planet. And among them was Korr Valis, a tall, scaled historian from the archives of Zentar Prime, who had spent his life searching for lost records about the time when Earth was not silent but dangerous. Korr Valis stepped forward, his voice low but strong, and he said that the signals coming to the screen were not random. They were war codes, and not just any war codes, but human war codes from centuries ago, codes so old that most believe they had been erased from every record in the galaxy. And now here they were again sent from the very surface of the planet, as if Earth was awake once more. The flashes on the screen grew brighter, and then the image changed, showing only a dark shadow moving across the land, its edges unclear, yet its scale so great it seemed to cover mountains and seas. And then the image turned to static again, and the noise echoed in the great hall, until at last a single line of text appeared written in galactic standard for all to read. "Do not come here." The words burned into the minds of every delegate, and for a long moment there was no sound, only the cold hum of the machines in the walls and the faint beating of hearts from 100 different species. And then the council leaders began to speak, quickly in overlapping voices, calling for closed doors and sealed records, and for the first time in many cycles the great doors of the council hall were locked from the inside. Outside the station the stars drifted silently, yet the image of hung in the thoughts of all who had seen it, and none could forget the strange storm lights or the massive shapes moving above the planet. And many feared that if Earth was stirring again, then the old stories might be true, and those stories spoke of fleets that never returned, and weapons that could turn worlds into lifeless rock. In the corner of the great hall, Korr Valis stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and his eyes fixed on the darkened screen, for he knew that this was no random signal, and no empty warning. He remembered the tales of the planet that fights back the world that could not be taken, and the species that would rather burn their own sky than bow to an enemy. And though the galaxy had long believed Earth was sleeping, Korr Valis knew that some things do not sleep forever. Beyond the council walls, the ether-crowned station floated in its orbit, a gleaming jewel of peace and unity. Yet even here whispers of fear were spreading fast, as messengers carried news to hidden corners of the galaxy, and some began to prepare for the worst, while others simply prayed that the warning would be enough to keep ships far from the Sol system. But in the deep dark near the quiet star that humans once called their sun, something old was moving, and the signal that reached the council was only the first ripple of storm that had been waiting for a very long time. And as the delegates argued behind their locked doors and their shimmering walls of crystal light, they did not see the second signal that left Earth only minutes after first, carrying a message not meant for the council but for someone else entirely, someone far away who would know exactly what it meant and who would answer without hesitation. And so the hall remained locked and silent to the outside world, while beyond its walls in the endless dark the game that had once made Earth the most feared planet in space began again. Korr Valis left the great hall once the council session was ended, his mind heavy with questions that refused to let him rest. And though the other delegates walked away whispering about closing the Sol system to all travel, he knew that this was only the beginning, and that something deeper was hiding in the signal that no one else wanted to see. He moved quickly through the crystal corridors of the ether-crowned station, his scaled hands gripping a small data crystal that he had quietly removed from the council terminal, before the guards could secure it, for inside that crystal was a full, unedited signal from Earth, not the shortened version the Council had shown to the delegates, but the real one with every second of strange noise and flashing light, preserved exactly as it had been received. Reaching his private chamber, he sealed the door and activated the small sphere that floated to the center of the room, filling the air with a shimmering blue light, a secure hollow field. No one outside this room could hear or see what he was about to do, and even the station monitors would show nothing but a dark and empty room. The signal played again, the first frame showing the wild sky above Earth filled with those strange lights, but now Korr Valis slowed the image frame by frame, and there hidden inside the flickers was a pattern of rhythm that matched nothing in the known galaxy, yet stirred something in his memory, for it reminded him of the way humans once sent messages across great distances using flashes of light, so quick that most machines ignored them. He adjusted the filter, and the pattern became clear, each flash forming a shape, and each shape forming a code, and together the code told a short but chilling sentence: "They are coming back, and we are ready." Korr Valis felt his chest tighten, for if humans were warning that someone was coming back, it could mean only one thing: the return of the enemy. They had fought long ago the same enemy the galaxy believed be destroyed at the cost of human blood and fire. Yet there was more, for in the deep background of the image, just beyond the storm light, something vast was moving, something so large it seemed part of the horizon, until it shifted and revealed lines too perfect and angles too sharp to be natural. It was a machine, but like no ship Korr Valis had ever seen. The historian recorded every detail before shutting down the hollow field. He knew the Council would not believe him, and even if they did, they would bury the truth to keep the peace, but peace built on ignorance was fragile, and when it broke, the fall would be worse than anything they feared now. Across the station, others were already reacting to the news. Merchants were canceling routes near Sol patrol fleets, were adjusting positions, and bounty hunters whisper of rich rewards for anyone daring enough to bring back proof of what Earth was hiding. Yet none of them knew what Korr Valis knew, and none of them had seen the shape moving in the sky above that blue and green world. Far away in the outer ring of the galaxy, a hidden listening post caught the second signal from Earth, the one the Council had never seen. This one was not a warning, but a call, and the call was answered by an old, deep voice that spoke only 3 words: "Prepare the way." On Earth, the storms grew brighter, and the massive shapes in the clouds became clearer to those who dared approach, though no ship came close enough to touch the atmosphere. Many recorded the glow from a distance, and swore that the shapes were alive, moving with the grace of predators and the power of war machines. Korr Valis felt the weight of decision pressing upon him. If he told the truth to the Council, they might silence him, or worse, if he stayed silent, the galaxy would be caught unprepared. But there was a third path, one that would take him far from the safety of the station, and into the dark near Sol. He could go there himself and find the answers no one else would dare seek. He gathered his few belongings and stored the data crystal in a small compartment on his wrist, guarded his long cloak, hiding the movement from curious eyes. And with careful steps, he made his way to the lower docks, where the smaller private ships waited, most of them belonging to traders and explorers who valued speed over comfort. Finding an old but sturdy scout ship, he approached the pilot, an insectoid wanderer named Zirek, who owed him a favor from many years ago. Without explaining the full truth, he asked for passage to the edge of Sol. Zirek hesitated, at first speaking of the stories and the warnings, but in the end he agreed for a price. As the ship undocked and the station lights faded behind them, Korr Valis felt the cold pull of the void and the slow hum of the engines carrying him toward the most dangerous place in the galaxy, the place that once made every empire tremble. He knew the journey would be long, and that whatever waited for him, there would change everything. And he also knew that somewhere out in that darkness, the enemy humans had fought before might already be on the move. And so the ship vanished into the starfields, while behind them on the ether-crowned station, the Council argued about trade and treaties, still unaware that the storm above Earth was only the first shadow of something far greater and far more dangerous than they could imagine. The small scout ship drifted through the void with a low, steady hum and a faint flicker of distant stars gliding past the edges of its reinforced windows. Korr Valis sat in the co-pilot chair, his hands resting on the arms, as he stared at the ever-growing shimmer. Ahead, the Sol system was still many hours away, yet its light was already visible, a warm and steady glow that seemed almost alive in the emptiness of space. Zirek, the insectoid pilot, kept his multifaceted eyes on the navigation screen, his long, thin fingers tapping commands into the console with the speed of someone who had crossed dangerous sectors many times before. He did not speak much, and Korr Valis was grateful for silence, for it gave him time to think about what he had seen in the signal and the massive shape that had moved in the sky over Earth. The journey was not without its hazards on the second day. They crossed a silent field of drifting debris, each fragment twisting slowly in the dark the remains of ships and stations that had once floated proudly among the stars. Some wrecks were ancient, covered in the dust of centuries. Others were fresh, their metal still gleaming under the cold light of nearby suns. Zurich steered carefully through the field, never taking his eyes from the path, while Korr Valis noted how many of the wrecks bore scars that did not match any known weapon in the galaxy. A shadow passed across the forward glass, and both turned their heads in unison. High above them, moving slowly, was a massive structure shaped like a crescent and glowing faintly with red veins of energy. Korr Valis felt his chest tighten. The thing did not drift like wreckage. It moved with purpose, and each movement seemed deliberate, as if it was watching them. Zurich said nothing, but his antennae twitched nervously, and his hands moved faster over the controls. For hours after the encounter, neither spoke, yet both felt the weight of what they had seen. It was not a human ship, and yet it did not match any design known to the great galactic fleets. Korr Valis kept thinking of the warning hidden in the signal. They are coming back, and we are ready, but the enemy had already entered the outer edges of the solar system. Then maybe the humans were ready for a reason. By the fifth day, the ship approached the edge of the solar boundary, a wide, invisible sphere monitored by thousands of hidden sensors and automated defenses. Zurich slowed their speed as the navigation alarms lit up one by one. Korr Valis knew that even if they could not see them, the machines of Earth could see them perfectly. Every movement, every signal, every spark of energy was now being recorded. A deep mechanical voice filled the cabin. Unidentified vessel. You are entering a restricted zone. State your purpose and origin, or turn away immediately. Zurich glanced at Korr Valis, who nodded slowly. Before speaking, we are travelers seeking knowledge. We request safe passage to the outer ring for observation. And trade. The voice was silent for several seconds, then returned with calm but firm tone. Proceed with caution. Remain on designated path. Deviation will result in destruction. The path given to them was narrow and winding, forcing the ship to move slowly between drifting metal structures and glowing beacons, some shaped like giant arrows, others like spheres that pulsed softly with white light. Each beacon carried the emblem of Earth, a simple design, yet one that every species in the galaxy recognized and feared. As they followed the path, Korr Valis began to notice shapes in the distance, shapes that first looked like asteroids, but upon closer view were armored stations bristling with weapons, some as small as a scout ship, others larger than cities, each one silent and still, but carrying the quiet promise of sudden violence. They reached the outer ring, a wide stretch of space where ships could dock, refuel, and trade. Without ever setting foot on the planet below here, they found dozens of vessels from across the galaxy, all anchored at a careful distance from each other. Merchants, scientists, mercenaries, and wanderers, all drawn by the mystery of Earth, yet unwilling or unable to go closer. Korr Valis left the scout ship and walked the docking platform. The artificial gravity here was steady, and the air was thick with the scent of metal, oil, and ozone from the constant maintenance drones scuttling across the surface. He kept his hood up as he moved through the crowd, listening to the whispers of traders speaking in hushed voices about the storms growing larger over Earth and the strange new ship seen in orbit. One merchant, a squat furry creature with bright gold eyes, spoke of a convoy that had vanished 2 days earlier while trying to deliver supplies to a research outpost on one of Earth's moons. No wreckage had been found, no distress signals recorded, only a flash of light, and then silence. Another spoke of hearing a deep rhythmic sound over the comms when approaching the planet, a sound like a heartbeat, slow and heavy. Korr Valis felt that each story, no matter how strange, carried a piece of the truth. The humans were doing something below those clouds, something that kept others away, and maybe something that even the great galactic archives had no record of. He decided that staying in the outer ring would not give him the answers he needed. He would have to find a way to get closer to the planet itself. He returned to Zurich with a request: take me into low orbit above Earth. Zurich tilted his head in disbelief. You know that his suicide the defenses will not let us near, and even if we pass them, the storms could tear this ship apart. But Korr Valis was determined. If the humans were preparing for the return of an ancient enemy, then the galaxy needed to know what that meant, and he could not rely on rumors alone. After long silence, Zurich agreed, but only under one condition. If things turned bad, they would escape. Immediately, no questions asked, Korr Valis accepted, and within an hour, they had left the relative safety of the outer ring, heading toward the pale blue sphere that filled more the window with each passing minute. As they drew nearer, the storms became visible not as random clouds, but as vast spirals of light and shadow, each one moving with strange precision. Flashes of red and blue lightning danced across the surface, and for a moment Korr Valis thought he saw enormous shapes moving within the clouds, shapes that seemed almost alive. Then the calm crackle again. Unidentified vessel, you have entered a prohibited zone. Turn back now, Korr Valis. And Zurich exchanged a look and said nothing. The warning repeated, then fell silent, replaced by a different voice, one that was calm, yet carried away to command. You are not authorized to see what lies ahead, but you will see it anyway. Prepare for escort. From below the cloud, several sleek black ships emerged, moving in perfect formation, each one marked with the same emblem of Earth. Their movements were precise, like a single mind guiding many bodies. And without firing a shot, they surrounded the scout ship, their leader, speaking again, "You will follow us, and you will not deviate." Korr Valis knew then that whatever the humans were hiding, they had just invited him to witness it, and that invitation would change everything he believed about the most feared planet in the galaxy. The escort ships moved with silent precision, guiding the small scout vessel toward the swirling clouds that wrapped around the planet below. The light from distant stars caught on their dark hulls, making them shimmer like pieces of night pulled from the void. Korr Valis sat forward, gripping the armrest, as the blue and white sphere filled the entire view. The storms roared silently beyond the thick glass, yet their patterns moved like the strokes of a careful hand, almost as if someone was shaping the weather itself. Zurich kept his gaze locked on the nearest escort ship, its sleek design and angular form unlike anything in the known galaxy. The markings along its side glowed faintly in the darkness, shifting in color from deep crimson to icy silver, as if reacting to unseen signals. His antennae twitched in quiet unease, and his thin fingers danced lightly across the controls, adjusting their speed to match the formation. As they descended, the clouds seemed to open in front of them, a wide passage of swirling mist parting to reveal a world hidden from the view of every outsider. Below the storms lay an expanse of water and land bathed in a strange golden light that did not seem to come from the sun. Towers of black stone and silver metal rose high into the sky, their tips glowing with energy arcs that reached across the horizon, each tower linked to the next by thin beams of light, forming a vast network across the surface. The escort ships led them lower, and Korr Valis saw movement on the ground, enormous machines shaped like great beasts crawling across the land, each step shaking the earth below. Their bodies were covered in armor, and their heads carried massive arrays of sensors, weapons, and unknown devices that pulsed with energy. The machines moved in precise lines, their paths crossing at exact intervals, creating a grid that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. In the skies above the towers, smaller craft darted like insects, their wings shifting shape in mid-flight. Adapting to the air current around the storms, they flew in perfect synchronization. Without a single collision, their movement so natural, it was impossible to tell where a machine ended. An instinct began. Korr Valis felt the back of his neck grow cold, for it was clear none of this was for display. Everything here served a purpose, and every motion was part of a larger plan. The lead escort ship spoke to the calm, "Follow us to the Citadel. You will be received by the Council." The voice was calm, yet unyielding, leaving no space for argument. Zurich guided the scout ship through the final layer of mist until a colossal structure came into view. It stood in the middle of a great circular plain, its base wider than any city, and its height vanishing into the golden clouds above. The walls were made of black alloy that drank in the light, while thin streams of blue energy ran through channels carved deep into the metal like rivers of power. Landing platforms jutted out from the sides of the Citadel, each one large enough to hold dozens of ships, yet only a few were occupied. The escort guided them to one platform near the central tower. As they touched down, the landing clamps locked into place, with a deep thrum the deck beneath their feet, vibrating with control power. A group awaited them at the edge of the platform, tall figures dressed in armor that seemed to shift colors with the light, their helmets smooth and featureless, yet each one carried the emblem of Earth on their chest in one solid black stripe. They moved forward in unison, stopping only when Korr Valis and Zurich stepped from their ship. The leader raised one hand in greeting. Though no words were spoken, instead a new voice entered Korr Valis' mind, deep and steady. "Welcome to Earth, traveler. You have been brought here because you carry questions the galaxy fears to ask." Korr Valis tried to respond aloud, but the leader shook his head, speaking. "Without sound, your voice is not needed here. Thoughts will carry more truth. Follow us." The group turned and moved toward a vast open archway that led into the Citadel. The interior was a cathedral of machinery, and light the walls lined with panels that shifted images at a thought, each showing maps, star charts, and streams of data in symbols Korr Valis had never seen. The floor pulsed faintly under his boots, as though the Citadel itself was alive. They walked through long halls past soldiers, engineers, and robed figures who all paused briefly to look at the newcomers before returning to their work. In one chamber, Korr Valis saw a massive globe suspended in mid-air, glowing faintly with blue and red light patterns. Lines of energy traced across its surface, connecting points scattered across the galaxy, each point pulsing like a heartbeat, some bright, some fading to darkness. The leader stopped before the globe and turned to Korr Valis. This is a web of defense. Every world marked in blue stands with us. Every world in red stands against us. Every fading point belongs to those who have already fallen. You wish to know why Earth is feared? It is because we have faced what the galaxy has not, and we have survived. Korr Valis felt the weight of the words pressing into his mind. The leader gestured to a darkened corner where a single sphere glowed faintly in white light. That is the enemy. They are older than the first stars, and their purpose is to consume all that lives. They came once before when Earth was still young. They broke worlds in half and silenced the voices of countless civilizations. We fought them with everything we had, and we drove them back, but they are returning. Now and soon the galaxy will see the same storms we have held at bay. The thought sent a shiver through Korr Valis' spine. He remembered the strange shapes in the storms, the massive machines on the surface, the endless precision of defenses, all of it designed for a war no one else believed was coming. The leader stepped closer, their voice sharper. Now you will leave here with a choice. Speak the truth to your people, and prepare them or remain silent, and watch them vanish into the dark. Before Korr Valis could respond, the citadel shook with a deep, low rumble. Alarms flared in the walls, and the globe in the center of the chamber shifted. Several of the red points began to spread outward like fire, consuming the blue nearby. The leader turned to the soldiers, their voice now a command. Lock the storm gates and ready the planetary shield. The enemy is testing our line. Zurich stepped forward, his antennae trembling. Are they here already? The leader looked at the storm-filled horizon and spoke with grim certainty. They have never left. They were only waiting for the moment. The galaxy was too distracted to see them coming. Now that moment has arrived. The air inside the citadel grew heavy with the sound of distant thunder rolling through the massive walls. The hum of the energy streams became louder, their glow brightening, as if the very structure was preparing for something immense. Korr Valis felt his chest tighten as he followed the leader and the group of armored guards down a corridor that seemed to stretch for miles. The walls here were lined with strange black panels that shimmered like water and reflected not their bodies, but flashes of other worlds, as though the citadel was connected to countless places at once. Zurich moved quickly, his antennae twitching in every direction. The golden light from the sky outside flickered across his pale skin as the group emerged into a vast chamber filled with machinery that reached from the floor to the ceiling. Each device thrummed with deep vibrations, sending faint ripples through the air. In the center of the chamber stood a circular platform surrounded by 12 towering pylons. Streams of blue light ran between them, forming a swirling barrier of energy above the platform. The leader stepped onto the platform without hesitation, their armored boots making no sound despite the weight of their presence. Korr Valis and Zurich followed, cautiously staring at the strange energy above them. The leader's voice echoed in their minds. These are the storm gates. They are the reason the enemy cannot enter this world from above. The gates bend the storms around the planet, turning them into a shield that no vessel can pass without being torn apart. As they spoke, the light above the platform flared brighter, showing shapes within the energy currents, great shadows moving in the clouds. Outside, some shapes had wings like knives, others moved with hundreds of limbs, their outlines impossible to fully understand. Korr Valis felt his thoughts falter as the images shifted to massive dark eyes that seemed to stare directly into his mind, each gaze cold and endless. The leader raised one arm, and a control panel rose from the floor. Streams of data flowed across its surface in symbols Korr Valis could not read. The leader's thoughts came sharper now. They are probing the storm gates, testing for weaknesses. They will keep pushing until they find a flaw, and when they do, they will strike without warning. Soldiers began to pour into the chamber, their armor gleaming under the shifting lights. They moved with silent precision, taking positions around the pylons and linking their weapons into the base of each one. Blue sparks ran down the barrels of their rifles, merging with the energy lines that connected the gates. Zurich watched with wide eyes, his voice breaking the silent air. For the first time since their arrival, why not warn the other worlds? Why keep this fight hidden? The leader turned their featureless helmet toward him. Because the galaxy does not believe the enemy exists, they call the myths shadows from a forgotten war. But Earth has kept the memory alive, because we fought them, and we know their hunger, and we know that to speak of them without proof would only scatter fear and confusion. A sudden tremor shook the platform. The pylons flared white as a deep booming sound roared through the chamber. Somewhere above them, the storm gates pulsed with violent energy. The shapes in the clouds grew clearer, revealing massive forms like ships, yet alive, their surfaces shifting like muscle and bone. Korr Valis felt a wave of nausea as the largest of shapes pressed against the swirling barrier, its many limbs scraping at the energy wall, sending cascades of sparks into the golden light. The leader's voice cut through the tension. The gates will hold for now, but they will not stop forever. Every time they touch the shield, they learn a little more soon. They will know enough to pass through, and when that happens, every defense we have will be tested. They move from the platform into another hall, this one carved into the inner walls of the citadel itself. Along the sides, great windows open into view of the storm belt outside. Lightning danced through the clouds in twisting spirals, striking the surface below with silent flashes in the distance. More towers rose their beams of light, linking together across oceans and mountains, forming an intricate web of protection. Korr Valis realized that the entire planet was covered in these structures, each one feeding power into storm gates above. The hall ended in a command center, where walls of glowing panels displayed countless streams of data. Holographic projections floated in the air, showing the planet its defenses, and the surrounding space operators in dark uniforms moved swiftly from one station to another, their eyes fixed on the shifting maps. The leader approached the central table, where a massive projection of the storm belt spun slowly above a glowing earth points of red. Light appeared and faded across the surface of the projection, marking each place the enemy had touched the gates. An officer saluted and spoke quickly. Their voice, urging the pressure, is increasing on the eastern arc. Sector 9 is holding, but Sector 12 has taken 3 breaches. In the last cycle, the leader gave no visible reaction, but their voice in Korr Valis' mind grew colder. Seal Sector 12 with full reserve energy, reroute power from the outer towers, and prepare the inner defense grid. The officer obeyed without hesitation. Projections shifted as new lines of energy traced across the planet, closing the weak points. Korr Valis felt a strange mix of awe and fear. He had seen planetary defenses before, but nothing like this. Every move here was deliberate, every command part of a system that had clearly been perfected through centuries of war. Xeric leaned close to Korr Valis, his voice low. They are fighting a war the galaxy does not even know is happening, and they are winning. But for how long? Korr Valis did not answer, his eyes fixed on projection, as the red point slowly began to fade. Then, without warning, the projection flared bright white, and an alarm ripped to the command center. A new point had appeared, not on the storm gates, but deep inside the planet's defense grid, far from any known breach. The room erupted into movement, officers shouting command, soldiers rushing toward the exits. The leader turned to them, their voice sharp and urgent. There inside. Before Korr Valis could ask how, the lights flickered and the floor beneath them shuddered with a deep, heavy impact. The golden glow outside dimmed, replaced by the jagged flash of pure white lightning striking closer and closer. The leader raised their hands, signaling the guards to surround the visitors. You will remain here until the threat is neutralized. This is not your fight. But Korr Valis felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had come here seeking truth, and now he was inside the very storm. That truth had been hiding behind the enemy was no longer just a shadow in the clouds. It was here, somewhere on the surface of Earth, and the look in the leader's posture told him that whatever had breached the gates was unlike anything even they had faced before. The command center was shaking as if a giant heart beneath the planet was beating too fast, each pulse running through the floor and walls. of golden light of the storm outside flickered wildly, and shadows from the lightning danced like living shapes across the ceiling. Korr Valis stood frozen, trying to process what the leader had said. The enemy was inside the defense grid, and that meant the storm gates above had been bypassed, or worse, something had slipped through without being noticed. Xeric looked around with wide eyes. The operators were shouting readings and reports, every screen and projection showing bursts of white static that broke the flow of data. Strange signals were flashing across the displays, and none of them looked natural. The leader moved to the central projection table, their armored fingers sliding across the glowing surface. Streams of energy lines shifted to reveal the location of the breach. It was deep within the southern hemisphere, near an area marked as the Hollow Expanse. The Hollow Expanse appeared as a black void on a map. No readings, no structures, no towers of defense. Yet its position was inside the inner protection grid. Korr Valis could feel the unspoken weight in the room. Everyone knew what that meant. Something was down there that even they had not prepared for. The leader's voice echoed cold in their minds. A hollow expanse is not empty. It is the deepest scar left from the first war with the enemy, and it has never been opened since. The floor shook harder, now dust drifting down from the high ceiling. Somewhere distant, a deep groaning sound rose from the earth itself, like the grinding of ancient stone. Korr Valis felt his chest tighten, his mind racing with questions. How had the enemy reached this place without triggering the full planetary alarm? Xeric stepped closer to the leader, his voice trembling. Are you saying They have been waiting beneath your own planet all this time." The leader did not answer. Instead, they motioned to a squad of armored soldiers who gathered at the chamber's exit, their weapons glowing faintly with the same blue light. "As the storm gates, you will come with us," the leader said in their mind voice. "You came here seeking the truth, and now you will see what truth has been buried under earth for centuries." They left the command center, moving quickly through narrow corridors lit by strips of pale light, the hum of the citadel's core vibrating through the walls. Every turn seemed to go deeper into the structure, until the air itself felt heavier. Korr Valis noticed the temperature was dropping, and each breath felt sharper, as if the air was thinner. The corridors ended at a massive circular lift, its walls made of black alloy that absorbed the light around it. With a silent motion, the platform began to descend, the sound of grinding stone and rushing air filling the space around them. Minutes passed as the lift carried them into the depths. The walls outside shifted from smooth alloy to rough rock streaked with glowing veins of energy that pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of the planet. Zurich leaned closer to Korr Valis, voice low and tense. "I do not think they built all of this. I think they found it long before they built their towers." The lift slowed, then stopped, opening into a cavern so vast it swallowed the light. The hollow expanse stretched before them, a massive underground chasm with walls vanishing into darkness. Far above the floor was uneven and broken, massive shards of black crystal rising like jagged teeth. From the ground, streams of pale mist curled between them, and in the distance, something moved, shapes shifting in the fog. Too far to see clearly, the leader raised one hand, and the soldiers activated lights mounted on their armor beams, cutting through the haze to reveal structure scattered across. The chasm, ancient towers broken and half buried, their surfaces marked with symbols that pulsed faintly with red light. Korr Valis felt the air grow colder as they moved forward, the mist swirling around their feet. Then the ground beneath them shook again, this time with a heavy rhythm, each tremor coming closer from the shadows. Ahead, a sound began to rise, a deep clicking noise, like the grinding of stone against metal, and then something emerged. It was tall, far taller than any human, its body a twisted blend of muscle and shifting plates of black armor, its limbs jointed in strange angles, its face an eyeless mask of smooth bone with a mouth that opened too wide, revealing rows of narrow teeth. Steam rose from his body as if it carried the cold with. The soldiers raised their weapons, but the leader held up a hand. "Wait." The creature stopped several meters away, its head tilting slightly as if it was studying them. Then more shapes emerged from the mist, each one moving in silence, their bodies bending and twisting unnaturally. They formed a loose circle around the group, their teeth clicking in unison, the sound echoing across the cavern. Korr Valis felt a wave of instinctive fear, his mind screaming to run. But the leader stepped forward, speaking directly into the minds of the creatures. "You should not be here. The storm gates are still strong." The creatures replied, not in sound, but in a deep collective voice inside every mind. "Here the gates are strong, but the earth beneath them is older than the gates, older than your wars, older than you." The soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, but still did not fire. The leader's voice remained steady. "You have been waiting since the first war, waiting for the gates to weaken." The collective voice replied, "No, we have been feeding the gates from below. We have been learning the patterns of their power, and now we will turn that power inward." At that moment, the red light in the ancient towers flared brighter. The ground beneath them split, with thunderous cracked streams of white energy shooting upward into the darkness. The soldiers stumbled to keep their footing as the cavern roared with the sound of breaking stone. Korr Valis looked up to see the energy shooting toward the surface, and realized with dread it was the same energy that powered the storm gates above. The leader turned sharply to the group. "We must return to the surface. Now, if they reverse the gates, the shield will collapse from the inside." The soldiers began firing controlled bursts of blue energy at the creatures, who moved with terrifying speed, dodging between crystal shards and striking back with claws that cut through armor like paper. Korr Valis felt Zurich grab his arm, pulling him toward the lift as more creatures poured from the mist. A clicking sound, now a deafening chorus. The leaders stayed behind, covering the retreat with bursts of white energy from their own weapon, each shot burning holes straight to the black armored bodies of the enemy. But still more came, their eyeless faces turning toward the intruders. As they advanced, the lift doors began to close as Korr Valis and Zurich stumbled inside. The soldiers inside firing to keep the path clear. The last thing Korr Valis saw before the doors sealed was a leader standing against a wave of black and red, the cavern shaking apart around them. The lift began its climb, the sound of the battle fading, but the air inside was heavy with silence. None of the soldiers spoke, their eyes fixed on the floor. Korr Valis felt his chest ache, not from the climb, but from a realization the enemy was not coming from space anymore. It had been under their feet all along, waiting. The lift rose through the endless shaft, a grinding hum echoing off the black stone walls, and the pale blue lights above flickering with each vibration from the battle below. Korr Valis stood near the rail, his hands gripping the cold metal, his eyes fixed on the shifting shadows that clung to the walls as if they were alive. Zurich leaned against the opposite side, breathing hard to sound sharp, and uneven. The soldiers in the lift kept their weapons raised, even though the doors were sealed, as if they expected the black armored creatures to somehow climb the shaft and strike. The higher they went, the warmer the air became, yet the sense of dread grew heavier. The pale blue lights now flickered faster, and the grinding sound shifted into a low groan that felt like the entire citadel was straining against something far above. A loud, deep tone began to pulse through the metal around them, slow at first, then faster. It was the emergency signal of the storm gates, but it was distorted, bending into a low, vibrating hum that sent a chill through the bones of everyone present. The lift stopped suddenly with a sharp jolt. The lights in the ceiling flickered red, and the doors opened not into the command center, but into a side hall lined with heavy blast doors, half of them already open, and beyond them the glow of the outside sky shone unnaturally bright. A soldier nearest to the door stepped forward and froze. The rest followed, and for the first time Korr Valis saw what was happening beyond the citadel's walls. The storm gates that circled the planet's atmosphere were no longer pulsing with steady protective light. Instead, the arcs of blue energy that once flowed outward were curling inward like a vast whirlpool of lightning drawn toward a central point high above the citadel. The clouds above had been torn open, revealing a black sphere suspended in the sky, absorbing every strand of energy that touched it. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, and the hair on Korr Valis's arms rose from the charge. Zurich's voice broke through the shock. "They are turning the shield against you. The creatures were not lying. They have taken control of the storm gates, and now the energy is collapsing inward." The soldier at the door shouted for them to move, and they rushed out into the open. The wind howled across the platform, carrying with it a strange high-pitched whistle that came from the black sphere overhead. The sky flickered between gold and black, and for an instant Korr Valis thought he saw shapes moving inside the sphere, as if something was alive within it. The leader was nowhere in sight, but the comm channel on the soldier's helmet suddenly crackled with their voice, sharp and urgent. "I am still below. You must reach the central control tower and reverse the energy flow before the core collapses. If the core breaks, the shield will explode and burn the surface from pole to pole. Move now." They ran across the upper decks of the citadel, the metal floor vibrating under each step, the wind slamming against them with almost physical force. Below, the towers of the city stretched outward to the horizon, the streets filled with people staring upward, frozen by fear. The clouds churned faster, the lightning now striking downward in jagged spirals, hitting the tops of buildings and splitting their surfaces in showers of glowing shards in the distance. Korr Valis saw the ocean boiling where the lightning struck the surface, turning water into rising towers of steam. A loud cracking sound split the air, and one of the storm gates far on the horizon burst in a flare of white light, a ring of fire spreading outward as the structure fell from the sky, pieces glowing like molten stone. As they tumbled, the shockwave hit seconds later, slamming into the citadel with force that knocked Korr Valis off his feet. He hit the ground hard, the metal warm beneath his palm. Zurich pulled him up, and they kept running. The soldiers forming a tight ring around them, firing bursts into the air as small black shapes began diving from the clouds toward the city. The shapes moved fast, wings like shards of glass catching the lightning as they descended, their bodies the same twisted black armor as the creatures below the ground. They hit the decks with clawed feet and hissed a sound like tearing metal, lunging at the soldiers with speed that blurred the air around them. Energy bolts lit the space between towers, striking the creatures, but more came with each passing second. The sky raining them down like a living storm. The central control tower loomed ahead, its walls smooth and silver, reflecting the chaos around it. The main doors were half open, and sparks poured from the hinges. The soldiers pushed inside, forcing the doors wider. The moment they entered, the noise of the storm dulled, but was replaced by the deep hum of the planetary core, its steady rhythm broken by sharp pulses of distortion. Lights on the walls flashed crimson. The stairs ahead spiraled upward, vanishing into the tower's glowing center. They climbed quickly, feet pounding on the metal steps, the heat from the core rising with each level. By the time they reached the top, the air was heavy, and the walls were glowing faintly from a heat. The control chamber stretched in a wide circle, the ceiling opening into a column of light that rose into the clouds above. In the center stood the control spire, a tall pillar covered in shifting lines of light and rows of crystal plates, each plate humming with the energy of the storm gates. The soldier nearest the spire moved to activate the reversal command, but the crystals flared red, and a blast of force threw him backward across the floor. Korr Valis saw movement in the light column, and his heart froze. A figure stepped out from the beam, its body tall and thin, wrapped in black plates that dripped with streams of red energy, its face covered by a smooth mask without eyes or mouth, yet the air around it vibrated with a deep voice that spoke in. Every mind at once your gates are ours. Your skies are ours, and soon your world will be ours. The creature raised one hand, and the crystal plates began to crack, energy pouring into the light column and feeding the black sphere above the tower, shook with the strain Xeric shouted for them. To cut the link manually, the soldiers opened fire, but the bolts curved away as if bent by invisible hands. Korr Valis saw a small access panel at the base of the spire, and without thinking he ran for it, dropping to his knees, and pulling it open. Inside was a core of glowing blue wires, each pulsing like veins of light. He reached in and tore at them, his fingers burning from the heat. The creature turned sharply toward him, a vibration in the air, rising into a sharp, painful pitch. But before it could move, one of the soldiers launched a small pulse charge into the light column. The explosion was silent, but the beam flickered and dimmed just enough for Korr Valis to pull free the last of the wires. The spire screamed at a sound that was not mechanical, but alive. The red glow snapped into blue as the energy reversed and shot outward into the gates. The black sphere above trembled, its edges fraying into shards of light before collapsing in on itself. The lightning that had been spiraling inward now blasted outward, striking the sky in a ring that circled the planet. The creatures in the air and on the ground screamed in unison before burning into ash. The clouds above split wide, revealing the pale stars beyond the gates, once again shining in steady arcs of blue.